Hello, friends. I felt called to do a message tonight just to see what would come out. I don't know how this lighting is going to work out. This is a light I just like to use like whenever I don't want it to be totally dark, and then I have my other bedside lamp that I usually use, but it's been a while since I've done a reading just because life, right? And sometimes it's hard to talk about these topics whenever like so much of what's going on is like so much distress, just like globally, but especially nationally, and just like bad news like every single day. So it's like I'm trying to uphold a job, and then I'm also like listening to all this bad news. I also have my personal stuff going on, personal stressors. So just kind of felt like doing a reading tonight. So I was like, let me go with it. Usually I try to do them during the day whenever I have like, sunlight coming in, but that didn't happen today. So this is the way that you're going to have me. Also, you might have noticed I got my nails done. They have little pumpkins, which is very cute. Next time I saw a design they did that was like, it had like purple and black, which are my favorite colors, and it looked really nice. So I was like, next time I'm going to go in and be like, I want that one in particular, please. But moving on from that, let's get into the reading. The very first card that popped out for me was the Hermit, and it came out reversed. So this tells me that we're spending too much time in isolation, but what I'm really getting from that actually is that what we're doing is we're not bonding with other people. We're not finding our community. We're not making an effort to reach out to people around us. And a lot of us are tired of it. Like, we want some sort of community. We want some sort of connection to other people. And we just feel so like lonely in this world, especially with like all the things that are going on, The internet kind of like, it changes our perception of things because they really can alter things in a certain way. Like, there's so many bot accounts that just like write the same stuff. I literally, for my job today, I'm a social media specialist. I literally screenshot 2 messages that were the exact same thing word for word, and they were super lengthy messages, and they would seem realistic, like they're from real people, but they weren't, right? And it was something so like it doesn't even make sense, but of course they're trying to sell something, right? They're trying to get something across. So many people are using bots online, so we really have no actual concept or idea of what the majority of people think. Online is going to create some sort of idea of what it is, but and we're dealing with the people in charge who want to lie about everything. They want to fudge numbers. They want to pretend like things aren't real. So we're really getting to this aspect of like not knowing what's real anymore. And there's like this huge disconnect with that. And I'm really feeling that. Like the other day I saw just an ad online, and it was just like someone putting like a dress on. I thought the dress was cute. And then I thought, is this AI? I don't know. There are companies that are using AI. They said they're going to replace AI with model. Or they're going to replace models with AI. So it was like, well, then how would I know if I like the dress or not? This is a totally fabricated and made up thing. This isn't like something real. And they've also talked about like replacing actors in movies. Like, there's just so many things that they want to replace with, which just further disconnects us from each other. Like, we don't need this much isolation. We need more connection. We need more community with each other. So it's just like all of us are feeling that, like this need from the media, and this need from like what we're consuming, I guess, which would be media, is to pull us away from each other and to disconnect us from each other so much, and we're all tired of it. What we want is community. The whole idea of getting social media in the first place was to communicate with other people. But whenever they're trying so hard to replace everything about the connection that makes it something worth engaging in, they like try to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. They try to keep us from our community, right? Whenever they're making everything like an artificial like simulation, a lot of people don't want to engage in that. Our whole point of wanting to use social media, I read an article the other day, because my job is social media. I read an article the other day about how they're trying so hard to get us out of our DMs. They don't want us hanging out in our DMs, because if we're in our DMs, we're not going to see ads. And so they're trying as hard as they can. And that's why they've put like AI in our DMs, so that they can read everything that we're saying, so they can try harder to place us with ads, right? And it's so funny because it's like, that's the thing that a lot of people get on and literally just check their DMs, or they just check what their friends did, because we want the community, we want the connection, but they don't want us to have that, right? So that like forced like disconnect is like really bothering a lot of us. We feel so isolated from each other and like not really knowing what's going on. I also get the feeling too that a lot of you feel like you're having a difficult time deciding how you want to engage with other people. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they want to like get engaged like more locally or something like that, but they're really struggling with like where to find their community. And it's almost like there's too many options. And I also get the feeling too that like if you don't want to use social media to collaborate with other people, then you really are like stuck. It's really hard to just like find out about things going on around town. Sometimes you can like use different websites and stuff, but if people are not like, you know, telling their community board what they're doing, then you're not going to know that something's going on. Versus like using Facebook or something is the way that a lot of people find out that things are happening around them. I haven't been using Facebook in a while, but every time I get on, there's different like event invites, and the person like never told me directly, which like, you know, I guess they want to get the message across to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So they just make the event. But like, I don't know that it's happening because I'm not on there. So it ends up making you feel so disconnected. So there's all these different options, but sometimes it still kind of like comes back to that same like aspect of loneliness, right? And between these two cards here, I already went ahead and pulled my oracle cards ahead of time, but I have the World here. So the World between that Seven of Cups and that Hermit reversed is definitely telling me that like, because we've gone so global and because we've gotten to this connection of like super far away from each other, like we can have friends all over the world, right? But there's still like, it's like we're able to have those connections and that ability to reach each other, but people are lonelier than ever, right? And there's still like this push and this desire to make us even more lonely. Like whenever we've been isolated to our houses, you know, we went through a pandemic, there's a bunch of economic crises going on, and then now there's like just general terrorism and fear that there's, I hope I don't get flagged for saying that, but whatever. This like, all these like global issues like kind of like coming together are making it like to where it's difficult to decide what path we want to go down and what we want to do and what we want to interact with. And there's this like forced push to make us disconnect from each other as much as possible. I have over here Six of Wands reversed. I get the feeling that the people who are kind of in charge of this it's a losing battle, but they continue to just dive deep into a way that is not ever giving them anything like positive. They're not getting positive feedback, you know? I read an article recently where there's only like a 5% return of investment on pushing AI into all of our social media and all of our databases and stuff. So it's like they're not even making their money back on this, but they're still pushing it as much as possible. They're trying to do whatever they can, even though they've lost and they continue to lose. We also feel like we've lost, right? Like I definitely get this feeling of like there's just an overall like kind of like general sadness in the population of people just like not liking what's going on. Even people who may have been cheering for things previously, or like certain things that are happening that are, you know, from my perspective, not okay, but some people were cheering these things on, or if they came from it from a perspective of thinking that it might be better, then, you know what I mean? Then like, whatever. I'm not in people's heads, you know, but there's like definitely this overall general feeling where a lot of people are regretting it. Even if they're like too afraid to say it out loud, there's still like that general feeling of like just like regret and remorse and overall like sadness, overall like loss of hope, you know, things like that. I definitely feel that like going around here. Something that Spirit thinks that we should really try to implement to like combat this is like staying grounded as much as possible, looking for ways to like find meaning in like our everyday life. Sometimes like disconnecting from the internet might be the best thing, right? Like we're afraid of that like disconnecting purpose, but if you're online and like what you're interacting with is not actual people and what you're seeing is making you upset because that's how the internet is trying to work right now, they're trying to like feed you what upsets you so that you'll continue to scroll and you'll continue to look. And like I've totally like I got back on Threads recently because I wanted to start pushing my book a little bit more. And I was only on Threads for a little bit before it just immediately, like as soon as I would log on, it would just show me the worst of humanity. It like just post. And I was just like, I'm just going to get off. Like I worked all day. I'm tired. I don't want to do this. And that's also another big reason of why I haven't really been on TikTok as much lately or like other social media apps, because it's like I work all day, I'm tired, I don't want to get on the internet and be depressed by things that I don't know are real or not real, or see people say things that I don't know if that's a real person or if that's a bot. Like I just have no idea. So the next card that kind of popped out for us here was the Queen of Swords. And I think this is telling me that we need to be tactful about the way that we communicate. We need to be like almost like, I would say like, I can't think of a better word, but the word cold keeps coming to me, but not necessarily like icy, more of like gray rock, you know? Like not giving into people's reactions and not reacting so much to what you see. I've been talking a lot about online stuff, right? Like this stuff is just coming out of me. So I've been talking a lot about online stuff. So I think it needs to be a little bit more like logical, a little bit more like critical thinking, a little bit more considering like the source, considering like what exactly it is that you're seeing. It's a lot harder to like pick out the bots than it used to be. It used to be pretty easy, right? And sometimes it can still be, like sometimes it's so obvious somebody's a bot, but sometimes the things that they leave can seem really personable, or they can seem like they're just like too detailed and hit too many like little stones or like little checkpoints of like what an actual person would say. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to like decipher what is real and what isn't. So I think that this like this Queen of Swords is that reminder to be a little bit more critical with the way that you're communicating with people and think a little bit more about what you're seeing. So instead of seeing something and immediately like believing it and telling other people or immediately getting upset about it, maybe go and like double check sources. I know that's so hard right now because it's hard to trust like the media. It's hard to trust social media. It's hard to trust anything right now. And that's the whole point, right? Chaos is the point. Division, all of those things are the point. So I want you to really like think critically about these things. And I also want you to tell yourself sometimes like, hey, maybe I should get offline, or maybe I should find another resource to figure out like what's going on. You know what I mean? Things like that. And then we have the Empress reversed. And this also tells me too, to like, in a way, like, don't focus so much on what other people are doing, because it can be harmful to you, I guess, is like kind of what it's telling me. Like, you need to have boundaries around these things. It totally makes sense to be like upset and worried about like what's going on in the world, but you can't do it endlessly. You know, there's like a Buddhist teaching about this. I'm not like a Buddhist expert, but there's like a Buddhist teaching about this, where in all of life there is happiness and there is suffering. You know, at all points in life, someone is experiencing one or the other, and you will continuously experience happiness or suffering in your life, and they will continuously happen. A lot of times people focus a little bit too much on suffering. They don't even allow themselves to embrace happiness because they know that suffering is coming, or they know that suffering is around them. But the whole point of life is that we experience both of these things. That's the human condition, right? And then also, I learned a little bit something else from like more of the Christian standpoint too. Stay with me if you're not a Christian person. I'm not going to go on any sort of rant about it. But from the Christian perspective too, there's also like, I used to feel a lot of guilt about like, you know, why are good things happening to certain people, or why am I not suffering? And I think a lot of people talk about that just in general. And something I did here was the idea that if you are not currently in suffering, which is the Buddhist teaching, if you're not currently in suffering in some way, technically you're saved by God, right? In some sort of way. Some people use saved to mean like you follow some sort of like religious code and you've done the checklist of things. But if you take away that like religious, like structural like aspect of it, and just think of it as just like more of a philosophy rather than like these like very strict rules, then you're coming from this perspective of like, okay, so if I'm not in suffering, if I'm saved from this horrible fate or whatever, I'm not saying that anything was like particularly chosen for anybody. Oops. But if we consider that, then we consider that it then makes it our purpose to fight for people. And a lot of people take that to mean go and teach people to become, to like indoctrinate to your religion. But I would say, I would take it more of as just going and helping people who are in need, not with any like end goal really besides to help others and to be selfless, right? And so whenever we consider this, thinking about the world and stuff like that, I think that's where we have to like kind of like draw boundaries sometimes, you know what I mean? Because if we're constantly thinking about human suffering and we're constantly feeling guilty about the fact that we're not in a worse situation like other people are, so much so that a lot of people turn off their guilt. A lot of people don't even want to think about people going through something worse than them. They have to like put blame onto them. They have to villainize them, dehumanize them, because it makes them feel too guilty and they don't know what to do with guilt. You know, and whenever we do think about these religious practices, a lot of them teach you that like if something bad is happening to somebody else, they deserve it, right? And if something's good happening to you, you deserve it. It's not about deserving. It's about like kind of just where you are in life. And if you just happen to be somebody who's not currently in suffering, then it's your duty to help others. But if we are constantly always worrying about it to where we can't sleep, then we need to kind of like back off a little bit and kind of like consider like, okay, what are some basic things that I need? You know what I mean? You can't give from an empty cup. You know what I mean? So it's like, try to focus a little bit more on yourself and not so much on human global suffering. Maybe pull back a little bit from what's going on. I know the whole central focus of this reading was the Hermit reversed. So it's telling us like that we're too isolated, but I'm also going to take it to mean as these cards are coming out and this, you know, this reading is developing a little bit more. I think that also we need to consider that what is making us feel this isolation is the overstimulation of the world. That's really what I'm getting to here with these like current themes that keep going on, right? Like too many decisions to be making, feeling like a failure all the time, having to really like nitpick our words and consider what we're saying and consider what we're seeing. So it's like there's definitely needs to be like more of like boundaries, better boundaries around like what we're consuming, what we're thinking about, things like that. Because what good are you to help others if you're so distraught by everything that's happening that you can't even do anything for yourself, right? So you have to kind of like consider like, where are your boundaries? What do you need to do to take care of yourself? And also be able to acknowledge two things at once, right? There is suffering in the world. You can't currently do anything about it, right? You can make long-term goals to try and help and try and do your best. You can do small things locally to help. You can become a part of whatever, you know what I mean? You can make these longer goals, but at this current moment, you can't do anything about it, right? So those two things can exist. So what most people will do is if they can't do something about it, they immediately go into shaming mode, vilifying, dehumanizing, because then it can make them feel better and it absolves them of guilt. You don't have to feel guilty that bad things are happening to people around the world, but it does take that feeling and that emotion that you get to do something and be active about it. And if you can't do anything currently right now, make some sort of plan. You know what I mean? Work through those feelings rather than shutting them off. And I think that's got to be a part of your self-care, is being able to do something like this. Okay, I have the Magician here, and it was also with the Queen of Swords. So I think that's telling me that we can make magic with our words. I think you need to be a little bit more considerate about the way that you are speaking to other people and what kind of magic you can create with that, like what type of tools you can do with that. And also like what you can learn from other people too, like just from talking to people, just from communicating with people, things like that. Like there can really be some good introspection too, if you're thinking about like air sign, a lot of like introspection and learning from these communications and from these connections. And then I have Crafty here with, I totally messed up my thing, but whatever. Okay, so I have Crafty with the Empress reverse. So that's telling me that you need to be a little bit more creative and crafty about like how you're taking care of yourself, how you're showing up for yourself, things like that. Like you really need to think outside of the box, use your creativity, and then also like, I would say too, look in your past. I would say like talk to your elders and figure out like maybe how they dealt with things whenever like they maybe had less rights or they were going through like these like big issues or whatever, like how did they cope, and then kind of like learn and compare it to like what you can do today. If you liked my reading, please like, share, follow, whatever. I'm running out of time right now, but I would appreciate some sort of engagement, and I will talk to you next time I feel like sitting down and doing a reading.